2023 is looking like an amazing year for Brawlhalla so far, and I'm going to recap all of the important changes for you right here, right now, in one take if I can. I've got exams. Some are obvious why they're exciting, and some others are kind of subtle, but just as, if not more important and impactful in the long run. Let's start with the big one though. Cross progression, the ability for multiple devices or platforms to share an account and sync up their progress. This was actually announced a little while ago, this past November, but it seems like many people don't know about it, so here's the scoop. It is 100% confirmed, aiming for spring of this year. Hopefully the devs aren't going to be overworked trying to hit that deadline. I think we can all appreciate if it's a little later and more refined than if everyone at BMG is super stressed and it's rushed and there's a lot of corporate implementation that's going on in the background. That's not the right word. So if it's delayed, it's delayed. I imagine there's a ton of hours and a whole lot of spaghetti code that goes into an undertaking like this. But it's great. It's pretty massive news. Because for the longest time, there's been a giant question mark if it's even possible. Because these billion-dollar companies, Apple, Microsoft, Sony, Nintendo, all have to agree on a system that has the potential to cut into some of their game profits. Because people won't be double dipping in the shops. The fact that BMG is at a point where they can announce to the community that, hey, we're working on this, we want to put it out by this year, means that a good chunk of that legal mumbo jumbo is already in the process. And personally, I doubt I'll even use cross progression, but I'm still excited. I'm not gonna do multi-system play or account merging or anything like that, most likely, because I don't play the game on other platforms. But I know this is a huge deal to those that do. People that have sunk a ton in and want to eventually migrate, but feel like they can't because it'd be a waste. Or maybe people that do battle pass missions on the metro. I don't know. I fall asleep every time I'm on the subway. I don't want someone taking my phone, taking my account. But there you have it. Anytime you see someone asking, hey, where's cross progression, guys? Where? I want it now. I want it now, now. You can let them know that it's on the way. And let them know who told you as well, because I kind of need that guerrilla marketing, guys. I think this month, most people that watched actually are subscribed. So I can't even say the line. just join us. Join us. Moving on now to some gameplay updates that make me very excited. For as long as I've played, Brawlhalla's whole philosophy has been to deliver information as cleanly and as minimally as possible, which really does help with the overall feel of the game being intuitive and streamlined. So adding visual or audio indicators, pop-up effects, all that kind of stuff can muddy that vision a little bit, so they've always played it very safe when introducing new ways to communicate on-the-fly information. A little while ago, they implemented those red particle effects for your final jump, sweat beads for being out of options, smoke trails for big hits, a wall touch indicator, and when that happened, I remember saying I hope this was a sign of more good things to come, maintaining the identity of the game while also making it easier to visually understand what's actually happening on screen. And then they had the experimental feature removing the shaded outline of the jumpless state. When you're out of jumps, you get a bit grayed out. And they took that away. I was a bit concerned. A lot of people said they didn't even know it was in the game. And then a lot of other people said they can't believe you didn't notice that was in the game. And I think it's one of those features that's very monitor dependent, how your colors and shading are set up, all that stuff. And I think that's what they wanted to fix, making it more clear for everyone, regardless of your setup, which is a great reason to do so. But removing that visual information was the wrong choice. And it's reverted now, so no harm, no foul. But that means that something like that is probably in the works too. And I mention all of this background information to paint the picture a little bit that this has been the goal for a while. And development does take time. Everyone's wearing like 8 different hats at BMG and starting projects, stopping projects, having to shift projects, all that I imagine. So it's understandable, but it is nice to see the continued work on these features. So what's coming in the future? Well, a few things. HUD updates are live this patch where you can adjust the floating indicators above you and your opponents. Now you can have an arrow but no name on your enemies, varying symbols depending on team. You can make them all big if you have -5 vision, all that. And in experimental right now, there's the blue disarming effect, again, so that whole communicating information thing. They're looking for feedback, primarily if it can be distracting and obscure visuals mid-combo or mid-string. Overall, I think it's a pretty great addition. It's satisfying and all that. I do need to test it a bit more to see if it can be a distraction, but I think it's well on its way. Minor tweaks at most. Then, in a future patch, is a new system of accurate on-hit damage scaling. If you have no idea what I just said, when you hit your opponent, they flash the color of their damage range, but it doesn't actually match one-to-one to how damaged they are. Instead, it's based around the category, so white, yellow, orange, red, deep red. With this new system, it'll be a perfect match to your damage indicator at the top right. which will take some time to get used to. The flashes in your little mind brain, in your little hamster wheel that's like, oh, I know what combo to do here. It's gonna get messed up a bit, but it seems way better in the long run. More accurate information on the fly once again. Then from Photo, who just got promoted to Brawlhalla's new design lead, we got another proposed test feature to make short hops more accessible. The idea is that there would be a chord input, so you could short hop by holding downward as you jump. You'd still be able to execute it easily, but the proper rhythm gaming timing, as he says, would still be optimal. And I think that's so smart. You're bringing some more obscure, difficult to spot if you're a newer player options more in line with their abilities. But then you also keep the skill ceiling the same by rewarding players for practicing the proper timing. Also, this might make fast falls way more consistent when you're lagging around or you have ping that's just jumping up and down and changing your delay. One concern I do have though is with instant jump dares. If you're jumping and you're holding down and attack at the same time, I don't know how this is going to affect that. I don't know if you won't be able to easily get a full height dare if holding downward is the shortcut to short hopping. We'll see. This will probably take a bunch of testing too, maybe allowing for C-stick inputs to instantly directionally input an attack would be good. I don't know, I just said a lot of words, but you can see why features like this really need to be refined, because there's always going to be a caveat situation you might not think of that affects a ton of other areas of gameplay and how the game feels, which is probably the more important of the two. The changes are promising. I hope there's a lot more to come like it. The reason I had that long preamble about Brawlhalla's history of careful tweaks to the essence of the game is because it feels like with these changes, they're willing to step into that territory and take a bit of a risk. Quality of life changes that also bolster gameplay and also aid the viewing experience, which is a whole nother category that I didn't even talk about. How many times have you watched a pro player game and everyone's remarking at how incredible one of the interactions was, and you have no idea why it was impressive at all because so much looks exactly the same? Brawlhalla is really deceptively difficult. The charm of its animations and art style, as well as that deliberate minimalism that I talked about earlier, it gives the impression and the sense that it's an easy game and it's super simple, which is true to a degree, especially for entry-level play, but simplicity and depth are not necessarily intertwined there. You can have something that's incredibly deep and also very simple. I'm guessing that's also why people can kind of get mondo frustrated with BH, because it feels like they should be winning games since easy game, good game, but they don't realize the minutia to their opponent's technique. That's another video for another day, for another me. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that communicating more info allows you to literally see what people are doing better, which is nice. And I think that helps spectators as well understand what makes good players good. The big boys for this category of visual cleanup are a dodge cooldown indicator and damage numbers. Don't know if that'll ever happen. It starts getting even deeper into that territory of the fundamental design of the game. Of the two, I think dodge is way more likely, especially because we have this on-hit change and making mid-match damage assessments more accurate, and I don't know if they're going to go even further and further with that. We'll see. Of course, I'd love damage numbers, but taking things one step at a time, and I think these changes are great. But what's massive news about this news is not so much the features themselves as what they represent, kind of as I've been hammering home a little bit, because it's a willingness to alter some of the original game's blueprints that in the past, perhaps it was never even in the question. When you play Brawlhalla for a while, you get used to the feel of certain things, being out of jumps, being out of a dodge, GC timing, and string reads, and all that kind of stuff, and so we kind of feel like, oh, maybe we don't need all this stuff. But a new player will have none of that. It's a bit of an expert blind spot, and if we want the game to grow, hooking in more people and getting them to enjoy the game without ostracizing the existing player base is the ideal way to do it, and it's not easy. I'm hoping that more changes along that kind of philosophy get implemented, because although they seem small, they can make a huge difference in someone's enjoyment of the game. On that similar line of thought, we've also got some stuff that I'm very happy about this, and despite it having no real effect on the competitive or tournament scene at all, at least directly, there are more casual party fun stuff on the way. And I know a bunch of people that got into Brawlhalla but weren't too serious, they didn't want to play ranked, and there just wasn't enough goofy time to keep it in the game night rotation. So I think this is a massive area where we can improve on. We have a ton of game modes, but they're not all necessarily hee funny. You know what I mean? I don't know how to describe it other than that. And volleyball looks like it might be one of those. This is interesting. It reminds me of Slippy, if you've ever seen that. My dream is still to have a crazy bouncing around Lethal League style game mode, or a Mario Party progression thing. That was in the works for a little bit, but it was eventually scrapped, I think. But this is up there. It seems completely stupid in the best way possible. That is a compliment. We also have new gadgets. This is actually, in my opinion, more important for the party game feel than any new game mode you could add. We haven't had a new gadget for the entire time I've played the game. I started in closed beta. There have been some prototypes lying around in the game files for probably as long as that, so it's nice to see some real dev time going into it. If you're ever wondering why BMG hasn't done something that's not proper grammar, it's probably along the pedigree tree of, is it worth doing? Yes or no? Are there unforeseen consequences players are blind to? Yes or no? And if yes, do we have the time or the resources? Which for 90% of things that don't actively produce revenue to keep the studio trucking and paying salaries and benefits, it's probably no. It's probably just, and that's the unfortunate result of the games industry. And I think we can all agree that putting in more gadgets likely makes next to no money in the short term. But if we do start getting a little wild, a little crazy, that could be the key to getting an entire other player base interested. The wacky wonko items only crowd, of which I am a proud member from time to time. So excited, massive news. Also, adding nightmare difficulty to Horde, which is one of those things that if you never ever play it like me, do not care. But having challenging co-op game modes is great. I don't know how many of y'all played TF2, but how many people sunk a ton of hours into man versus machine. It's a good chunk of the player base. So more stuff like that, challenges you can work on with your friends, awesome. Rumor has it there is a bit of a Horde expert in my Discord server that'll get you the achievement if you ask around, but I didn't say that. I would never admit to Steam achievement manipulation. I don't want to go to jail. Also, my Discord server is still banned from public listings, by the way, for the name being Egg. Guys, it's been months now. My only hope is that if I change it to Egg Soup, it doesn't get double banned. I don't know. Last on this little neat thing is prestige level titles, which will be retroactively added to your account. That's cool. I don't use titles. Okay, very quick recap on balance. Now, there have been a billion balance changes that are significantly more impactful than most of the ones we've had in the past couple years, including the largest numerical change I think I've ever seen for a move ever. I'll talk about that more in detail in weapon-focused videos. It takes more time experimenting with stuff, getting a sense of how it feels to give you a proper analysis, I feel like. So for now, what's important to know is that on this side of things, changes have been also bigger than we've seen as of late, which is nice. And we also have balanced previews to look forward to as well, which is more communication, more transparency from the devs. Massive news. That's about it, but before you go, I do want to say something directly addressed to you gamers. If you're around last summer, you might remember that there was a lot of vitriol around seemingly everywhere in the community. Never before were there more people upset, slinging some pretty horrible stuff at the devs and any unsuspecting third party caught in the crossfire, and the message that the game's dead, it's done, it's over, was spreading like wildfire, in big part because of Multiverse's very successful release. And then it was compounded by a pretty not great update. But the devs didn't give up. And by give up, I don't mean stop working on the game, throw in the towel, hey, we're getting a new job. What I mean is they could have just very easily closed the line of communication to the community, and the game would probably not be affected that much at all. It's still a money-making machine. But they chose to improve their communication and implement some of the things that we've been asking for that internally, they're like, maybe this is not a great idea, but everyone's asking, let's do it. And nearly 9 months later now, vibes are at an all-time high. I can't believe I just said that. It's awesome though. We can and we should thank the devs for their effort and their time. People often don't get enough genuine appreciation, but I want to shift that a bit. I want to thank you guys as a collective body of viewers. Because it's so easy to forget. We as humans have all these biases where we tend to project our present selves onto the past and the future. There's all these studies about how political experts misremembered their incorrect predictions and they thought they guessed right when they didn't. Nobody cares. I'm just saying that because things are looking up now and the overall game community seems happier, I don't want to forget what things looked like before. And especially, I don't want to forget how this little mini sub-community was either. Because in the midst of all of that, when the vibes are at an all-time low, if I can do a little bit of a callback there, nearly everyone I saw here seemed respectful and understanding and cognizant that this is just video game. Not to say that it's not worth caring about, of course it is, but it's cool that you guys weren't dogpiling the negativity, and at least it looked like you saw each other as real humans and not faceless lizards. Had some infiltrators, of course, but yeah, vast majority, great. Thanks for being mostly nice and continuing to be nice, hopefully. I don't want to eat those words later. Please stop calling me an unstable psycho or an NPC. It hurts my feelings, but that's it. Bye-bye.